Mars was never silent. It never was. We only assumed it was, because for most of human history, silence was the only language space seemed to speak. When we looked up at the night sky, what we encountered was distance, darkness, and the quiet comfort of not knowing. The stars did not whisper, the planets did not answer, and Mars, rust-colored, distant, unmoving to the naked eye, became, in our imagination, a symbol of cosmic stillness. A world frozen, a world empty, a world quiet beyond comprehension. But silence, as it turns out, is rarely the absence of sound. More often, it is the absence of a listener. Take a moment, before we go any further, to notice where you are right now. Perhaps you are lying down, the room dim, the world outside softened by night. Maybe you are listening with your eyes closed, or maybe the screen glows faintly beside you. Wherever you are, there is sound around you, subtle, layered, constant. The hum of electricity, the distant movement of air, the rhythm of your own breath. None of these sounds demand attention, yet they are always present. Mars exists in much the same way. For centuries, we looked at it without truly listening, not because it was quiet, but because we did not yet know how to hear what it was saying. When early astronomers turned their eyes toward Mars, they saw a wandering light, one that moved differently from the fixed stars. It glowed red, a color associated with blood, fire, war. Entire mythologies grew around it. The Romans named it after their god of war. The Greeks associated it with Ares. Cultures across the world wove stories around its color and motion. But even then, Mars was not silent. It was speaking through movement, through light, through rhythm. We simply lacked the tools to translate its language. To the unaided eye, Mars offers only hints, a shifting position, a changing brightness, a presence that comes and goes with the seasons. From that limited information, we constructed a world of imagination. Canals, civilizations, deserts crossed by intelligent life. These ideas were wrong in detail, but not in spirit. They reflected a deep intuition that Mars was not nothing, that it held a story. As telescopes improved, the fantasies fell away, replaced by measurements and maps. The canals dissolved into optical illusions. The green men vanished. Mars became colder, harsher, more barren than we had hoped. And with that shift came a new assumption. If there is no life, if there is no atmosphere thick enough for wind like ours, if there is no ocean, no forest, no obvious movement, then surely it must be silent. This assumption lingered well into the modern age. Mars became, in popular imagination, a dead planet, a fossil, a quiet graveyard of geological time. We described it as dormant, inactive, still. But stillness is not silence.
Mars has weather. It has winds that race across its plains faster than the strongest storms on Earth. It has dust storms that engulf the entire planet, blotting out the sun for weeks. It has temperature shifts so extreme that rocks crack and fracture under the stress. It has seismic activity, Marsquakes that ripple through its crust like slow, ancient sighs. And yet, until recently, none of this had a voice. Sound, after all, requires more than movement. It requires a medium. Mars has an atmosphere, but it is thin, about 1% the density of Earth's. Sound travels there differently. It moves slower, it loses energy faster. High-pitched sounds fade quickly. Low frequencies carry farther. The planet does not echo the way Earth does. So when we imagined Mars as silent, we were really imagining it as speaking in a way we could not hear. This distinction matters more than it seems, because silence shapes perception. When something appears silent, we project emptiness onto it. We assume absence. We assume nothing is happening. But in reality, Mars has been active for billions of years. Its surface bears the scars of volcanoes taller than any on Earth. Its canyons stretch farther than our longest river valleys. Its dust moves constantly, reshaping the land grain by grain. Mars remembers. It remembers through layers of sediment, through mineral patterns, through frozen water locked beneath its soil. The planet carries a memory of warmth, of flowing rivers, of lakes that once reflected sunlight under a thicker sky. A memory does not need a voice to exist, but to be shared, it needs a listener. For a long time, we were not listening, we were only looking. Vision dominates human understanding. We trust what we see more than what we hear. Telescopes gave us images, beautiful, detailed, persuasive images. Mars appeared red, dry, still, and so we told ourselves a story that fit the picture. But sound reveals what images cannot. Sound tells us about motion hidden from sight, about pressure changes, about collisions, about energy moving through matter. On Earth, we hear the planet constantly. Wind in trees, waves breaking, ice shifting, the low groan of tectonic plates during earthquakes. Mars has equivalents to all of these. We simply did not yet have ears on the planet. That changed, quietly, without fanfare, when humanity placed instruments not just on Mars, but into Mars. Sensors that did not merely observe from a distance, but touched the ground, felt vibrations, measured pressure changes in the thin air, recorded fluctuations that, when translated, became something astonishing: sound. Not imagined, not simulated, not inferred, real. The first time we heard Mars was not dramatic. There was no thunder, no roar, no alien symphony. Instead, there was something far more unsettling in its subtlety. A wind that whispered rather than shouted. A low, breath-like movement across an empty plain. A vibration that felt less like noise and more like presence. It was the sound of a planet existing. And in that moment, Mars ceased to be silent, not because it had changed, but because we had. This realization invites a deeper question, one that goes beyond Mars itself. How many other things in the universe have we labeled as silent simply because we did not yet know how to listen? Silence, in this sense, becomes a mirror of human limitation, a placeholder for ignorance, a temporary word we use until understanding arrives. When you lie awake at night, the quiet can feel absolute. But if you listen carefully, there is always something beneath it, a distant hum, a subtle rhythm. Even the absence of sound has texture. Mars teaches us this same lesson on a planetary scale. It asks us to reconsider what quiet truly means. Is silence emptiness, or is it complexity beyond our current senses? The difference matters, because once you accept that Mars was never silent, you begin to see the universe differently. Space itself stops being a void and becomes a medium filled with subtle activity. Stars vibrate, gas clouds shift, magnetic fields oscillate. Even the vacuum hums with quantum uncertainty. The universe is not loud, but it is not mute. Mars stands as a reminder that listening is an act of humility. It requires admitting that the world may be speaking in ways we have not yet learned to hear, that meaning can exist without announcement, that presence does not require performance. As you rest now, as your thoughts slow, consider this. The planet Mars has been speaking for billions of years. Through dust storms and frozen valleys, through seismic tremors and atmospheric whispers, through the slow erosion of time. It has been patient. It waited for a listener capable of hearing without expectation. And now that we have begun to listen, the silence we once imagined has transformed into something far richer. Not noise, not chaos, but a quiet, continuous expression of existence. In the next section, we will move closer, not just conceptually, but physically, into how we finally learn to place our ears on another world and what it means to hear a planet breathe for the first time. For now, let this idea settle gently. Mars was never silent. We were simply not ready to listen.
Listening to a planet is not as simple as arriving there. Before we could hear Mars, we first had to unlearn how we listen. On Earth, sound is generous. It surrounds us, carries far, fills space easily. We take it for granted. We assume that if something moves, it will announce itself. If wind blows, we hear it. If ground shifts, we feel it.
Our planet is dense, loud, forgiving to our senses. Mars is none of these things. Mars is restrained. Mars is thin. Mars does not waste energy. For decades, this difference defeated us. We sent orbiters first, machines that watched from above, mapping valleys and volcanoes, tracing scars left by water long gone. They gave us vision without intimacy. Then came landers, still, cautious, rooted in place. They touched the soil, analyzed chemistry, tasted the dust, but still, Mars had no voice. Not because it was mute, but because everything we sent was designed to look, not to listen. Sound requires vulnerability. A microphone must expose itself to the environment. It must accept interference, distortion, uncertainty. For a long time, that risk felt unnecessary. After all, what could Mars possibly sound like? A windless desert, a dead plain, an echo that never comes. And so, listening remained an afterthought. What changed was not curiosity, but humility. As our understanding of Mars deepened, it became clear that the planet was not static. Dust moved in patterns too complex to ignore. Pressure changed rhythmically. Subtle tremors hinted at an interior that was not entirely still. Mars, it turned out, had a pulse. To hear a pulse, you need patience. The instrument that finally allowed us to listen was not flashy. It was not designed to impress. It was built to endure silence and to notice when silence was interrupted. Seismometers, pressure sensors, microphones designed not for atmosphere like ours, but for something far more delicate. Placing such instruments on Mars was an act of trust. Trust that there was something worth hearing. Trust that even if the sounds were faint, they mattered. When the first sensitive microphones arrived, expectations were deliberately modest. Engineers prepared for noise artifacts, for interference from the lander itself, for long stretches of nothing at all. They calibrated carefully, filtering out mechanical vibrations, isolating environmental signals. Then they waited. Listening, unlike seeing, does not reward impatience. And then, almost anticlimactically, the data arrived. What we heard was not silence breaking, it was silence revealing itself. The Martian wind did not howl, it brushed, it slid. It moved with a softness that felt almost intimate. Its sound was lower, more muted than Earth's wind, shaped by the thinness of the atmosphere. High frequencies vanished quickly, absorbed by distance. What remained was a gentle, breath-like murmur. It sounded less like weather and more like presence. For the first time, Mars felt close. Not visually, photographs had already done that, but emotionally. Hearing something creates a different kind of connection. Sound carries immediacy. It collapses distance in a way images do not. When you hear something, it feels as though it is happening with you, not merely for you. The first Martian sounds were not dramatic enough for headlines. There was no alien signal, no music of the spheres. Just wind, moving dust, interacting with metal, vibrating sensors. And yet, something fundamental shifted. Because those sounds were not simulations. They were not artistic interpretations. They were not guesses. They were real. They had traveled from another planet, passed through instruments resting on alien soil, crossed millions of kilometers as data, and finally emerged as something your ears could recognize. That matters more than spectacle ever could. Listening to Mars forced us to confront how narrow our definitions of activity had been. We had assumed that without oceans crashing or forests rustling, a planet could not speak. But Mars speaks in subtleties, in slow changes, in quiet persistence. The sounds revealed something else too: scale. On Earth, wind is often chaotic. On Mars, it feels measured, controlled. Dust particles are smaller, lighter. They move differently. When they strike surfaces, the sound is sharper, more delicate. Each grain matters. Mars is a planet that remembers every touch. Even the absence of sound became informative. Long stretches of near total quiet were not empty. They told us about atmospheric stability, about pressure gradients, about temperature layers stacking gently over one another. Silence on Mars was not nothing, it was data. And beneath the wind, beneath the surface, something else waited. The planet itself moved. Marsquakes, subtle seismic events began to register. Not violent like many earthquakes on Earth, but slow, resonant, deep. They traveled differently through the Martian crust, revealing its structure layer by layer. Each vibration was a message from the planet's interior, a reminder that Mars was not a corpse, it was resting. There is an important distinction between death and dormancy. Death is final. Dormancy is patience. Mars appears dormant because it operates on a timescale longer than our attention span. Volcanoes that have not erupted in millions of years still exist. A core that has cooled still shifts. A crust that no longer recycles like Earth's still fractures under stress. When Mars moves, it does so quietly. Hearing those movements reframed everything we thought we knew. The planet was not frozen in time, it was simply slower. Its heartbeat measured not in seconds or minutes, but in geological ages. This is where listening becomes philosophical. To hear Mars is to accept that significance does not require urgency, that something can matter deeply without announcing itself loudly, that existence does not need spectacle to be meaningful. We often equate silence with absence because our lives are filled with noise. We measure importance by volume, speed, intensity. Mars invites a different metric: attention. Listening also changed how scientists approached exploration. Once sound became a tool, new questions emerged. How does dust interact with structures? How does temperature affect acoustic behavior? How does sound propagate in a near vacuum? Mars became a laboratory, not just for geology, but for perception. The data showed us something unexpectedly poetic. Mars has a voice, but it speaks in a register closer to listening than hearing. You do not overhear Mars, you lean toward it, you wait. And in waiting, you discover that the universe is not indifferent, it is simply patient. For those who worked on these missions, hearing Mars for the first time was profoundly emotional. Not because the sound itself was dramatic, but because of what it represented. A confirmation that distance does not equal disconnection. That even across millions of kilometers, contact is possible. That a planet long imagined as dead could still respond. The recordings were shared carefully, often accompanied by long explanations to temper expectations. This is what Mars sounds like, scientists said, but what they meant was deeper. This is what Mars feels like when you stop demanding it perform. There is something deeply human about that lesson. In our own lives, we often overlook the quiet signals, the subtle shifts, the slow changes that do not compete for attention. We wait for noise to tell us something matters. Mars teaches us that meaning often arrives quietly. As you rest now, consider how many things in your own world you have labeled silent simply because they do not compete for attention. A breath, a thought, a presence beside you. Mars did not change when we listened. We did. And once listening began, there was no going back, because sound, once heard, reshapes memory. You can never again imagine Mars as entirely quiet. The idea no longer holds. It has texture now, character, a sense of place. In the next section, we will move deeper, beyond wind and surface vibrations, into the inner memory of Mars. What its sounds reveal about its past, about water, loss, and time itself. For now, let the quiet remain, not as emptiness, but as invitation. Mars is speaking, and you
are listening. Mars is not silent. Mars is a planet that remembers. But its memory is kept not with words, but with layers, not with sound, but with echoes, not with movement, but with traces. A planet's memory is hidden not on its surface, but beneath it. When we look at Mars, what we mostly see is loss, dried riverbeds, cracked deltas, spaces that were clearly once full of water, but now remained only as shapes. These are visual evidence, but visual evidence alone is not sufficient. You can see where something was, but to understand how long it lasted, how it was lived, when it fell silent, you need to listen. Mars's past was not lived loudly. It flowed slowly, seeped, withdrew, and left echoes behind. There was water on Mars. This is no longer an assumption. Chemical traces, mineral structures, deformations clearly say so. But how the water behaved, how long it stayed, what kind of relationship it formed with the planet, these are silent questions. Water is loud, but the water on Mars was not in a hurry. There is no chaos of floods here, no fury of storms. The water on Mars was long-lasting, stubborn, shallow in places, deep in others, but always patient. This kind of existence does not force the planet's structure, it persuades it. When a planet is persuaded, traces become permanent. This is exactly where Mars's memory begins. Every wind sound we hear on Mars actually passes through an older silence. Every vibration fills a void from the past, because Mars's surface was once much softer, more humid, more permeable. Sound behaves differently on a soft surface. Vibration lasts longer. Echo descends deeper. The acoustic data measured on Mars today does not only tell about today, it also reveals how the surface has changed. A void beneath a stone, the density of a layer, the depth of a crack, all affect the behavior of sound. Mars's sound is a map of its past. This is why even the smallest vibration recorded on Mars is important, because this planet does not erase its past. It covers it with dust, with time, with silence. On Mars, everything happens slowly. This slowness preserves memory. Earth is an active planet. Tectonic plates move. The surface constantly renews itself. The past is erased, written, erased again. Mars, however, is largely dormant. Plates are locked. Volcanoes sleep. This dormancy transforms Mars into an archive. A planet being an archive does not mean it is not alive. On the contrary, it means it preserves very carefully. Marsquakes measured on Mars, small, deep tremors, open the pages of this archive for us. Each tremor changes shape as it passes through a part of the internal structure. This change tells us how hard, how fragile each layer is. This is the planet conversing with itself. Mars does not tell its own past, but it allows.
One must pause for a moment and think about this. Mars has existed for approximately 4.5 billion years. Human history is as brief as a breath compared to this, but Mars's memory is vast enough to contain even this breath. The withdrawal of water on Mars was not sudden. It happened not with a catastrophe, but with a process of forgetting. The atmosphere gradually thinned. The magnetic field weakened. Solar winds swept the upper layers. Water could no longer remain on the surface. First it evaporated, then seeped underground, then remained only as a trace. This process made no noise, but it changed the planet's interior. The silence we hear on Mars today is the result of this long loss. Silence is not a beginning, but an after. It is a sign that things have been lived and completed. This is why Mars's silence is not emptiness, it is density. The human mind usually perceives silence as a threat because it carries uncertainty, but Mars's silence is not uncertain. On the contrary, it is abundantly clear. Everything is in its place. Every trace remains where it is. This is a world where time flows slowly. Listening to Mars's memory also disrupts our own perception of time, because here speed does not work. Speed misses the detail. On Mars, meaning emerges only through slowness. The erosion on a stone's surface is the sound of millions of years. The collapse at a crater's edge is the result of a long waiting. A valley's curve is the geometry of patience. On Mars, nothing was formed in haste, and nothing disappeared hastily. This is the most important feature of the planet's memory. Every wind we listen to passes over this memory. Every silence we hear carries the weight of the past. On Mars, sound is not an event, it is a context. This is why when listening to Mars, we actually listen to time. Time's heavied state, its solidified state, its state that refuses to forget. At this point, Mars ceases to be merely a planet. It becomes a teacher. It shows that silence is not an enemy, that waiting is not loss, that something being slow does not mean it is worthless. Mars whispers to us, not everything has to be understood immediately. Some things simply exist, and their existence is enough. Right now, as you listen, Mars is still there. The wind is still blowing. The surface is still trembling, and the past is still standing in place. In the next section, we will move to the relationship this memory forms with humans, how listening to Mars changes us, what kind of space this silent planet opens in our minds. For now, just do this. Breathe, and allow this slowness to slow you down too. Mars is not rushing. You don't have to either.
Listening to Mars is not only listening to Mars. After a while, the listener also begins to change. Because Mars is not a planet that answers, it is a planet that asks questions. But these questions do not come with words, they come with space, with waiting, with silence. The human mind shows an unusual reflex when faced with silence. First, it wants to fill it. It tries to produce meaning. It creates noise. Mars does not allow this. Mars does not accept the hurried side of the mind. Speed does not work there. A person trying to listen to Mars is forced to slow their own internal rhythm without realizing it, because this planet does not respond to the tempo humans are accustomed to. There are no dramatic explosions, no constant change. Things that happen on Mars are as if they have already happened. This situation shifts the mind into another mode. The first thing that changes is expectation. Humans often wait for something even when listening, a result, a climax, an explanation. Mars quietly defeats this expectation, and this defeat creates not disappointment, but relief, because you no longer have to wait. On Mars, meaning does not come, it is already there. This awareness begins a slow dissolution in the listener's mind. Thoughts still come, but cannot find a place to hold on. Mars does not feed thoughts, does not carry them, only allows them to pass. This is an unusual experience for humans. On Earth, everything gives feedback. Sound has an echo, movement has a response. On Mars, however, even the echo is measured, controlled, simplified. This simplicity makes the complexity inside the mind visible. People who look at or listen to Mars for a long time often describe the same thing, that time loosens, that thoughts become sparse, that perception deepens. This is not an effect of Mars, it is a permission. Mars allows the mind to feel its own weight. At this point, a person unconsciously shifts to something else, inner silence. But this is not an empty silence. It is not suppressed quietness. This is a state where the obligation to carry is removed. On Mars, nothing demands attention from you. Nothing calls you. Nothing makes you hurry.
This is why the mind in contact with Mars eventually releases its defense mechanisms. The state of constant alertness dissolves because there is no threat, no competition, no performance. On Mars, there is no concept of catching up. This opens an unexpected space of freedom for the human mind. On Mars, silence is not a lack, but a state, and this state teaches the mind. Every moment does not have to be full. People often fill silence because silence is uncontrolled. Mars, however, frames silence, makes it safe. This is why Mars's silence is not frightening, it is balancing. The listener, after a while, realizes thoughts are fewer but clearer. The mind is emptier but more awake. This is not a state of sleep, it is a relaxed awareness. Mars creates a state that is awake but not forcing. This state is one that modern humans have almost forgotten. For the mind that is constantly stimulated, constantly responding, constantly producing, Mars is a stopping space. But it does not say stop, it says just be. This is why listening to Mars is more like releasing something than learning something. The first thing released, the need for control. The second thing released, the obligation to make meaning. The third thing released, haste. Because Mars does not rush, you cannot either. This mismatch can be disturbing at first, but then it becomes comforting, because the mind finds for the first time the freedom to choose its own rhythm. On Mars, the rhythm is slow, but not stagnant. The human mind is actually like this too. Its natural state is slow, but the world has accelerated it. Mars takes back this speed. This is why someone listening to Mars after a while feels, I'm doing nothing, but nothing is missing. This feeling creates deep trust. On Mars, nothing demands from you, but it offers much. A space, a duration, a silence. This silence allows the mind to hear its own voice, but this voice is not loud. It is more like a flow. Thoughts come, go, do not hold on. The mind's interior expands. Mars teaches the human mind this: not every emptiness is dangerous. Some emptiness is a resting place. This is why the relationship formed with Mars is not only scientific, it is psychological, even existential. On Mars, in a world that does not belong to them, a person finds a silence that does belong to them. This is a paradox, but it is deep. Mars is a place humans cannot control. This is why humans learn to release control there. This learning happens without words, happens slowly, but is lasting. In this section, we noticed this silent space that Mars creates within us. In the next section, we will move to the connection this silence forms with the future, how Mars shapes not only the past and present, but how humans will think in the future. For now, do this. Notice that small space where your mind is silent. Don't fill it. Mars isn't filling it. You don't have to either.
When we look at Mars, we're not actually looking at the future. We're looking at how we want the future to be. Because Mars is one of the rare places that changes the way humans imagine. On Earth, the future is often associated with speed, technology, progress. On Mars, however, the future is silent. Mars does not promise more. It implies making do with less. This is why Mars becomes not only a place to go in the human mind, but a threshold of thinking. When you look at human history, you see that every great future dream has shaped itself around an emptiness, an unknown continent, an unmapped ocean, an unnamed sky. Mars is not the last link in this chain, it is the quietest link. On Mars, the future does not come with noise, does not come with advertising, does not turn into a promise. Mars holds the future as a question. How do you exist here? What do you really need here? What do you leave behind here? These questions shape the human mind more than Mars's surface.
When people talk about Mars, they usually focus on technology, rockets, habitats, life support systems. But behind this narrative, there is something deeper. Mars is a mirror that tests humanity's excesses. On Mars, nothing can be unnecessary. Everything is carried. Everything is calculated. Everything is simplified. This is why Mars implies not a fasted, but a clearer version of the future. On Mars, the language of the future is different. There, progress is not adding, it is subtracting. Fewer things, less noise, less complexity. This perspective creates an unnoticed change in the human mind. The future no longer feels like something constantly growing. It feels like something approaching balance. Mars whispers to us, sustainability is not a slogan, it is a necessity. And this necessity is not frightening, it is clear. People who imagine a future on Mars generally experience the same feeling, a kind of simple hope. There are no great triumphs, dramatic rescues in this dream. There is only the state of being able to continue. This is an unusual perception of the future for humanity, because we usually define the future with more speed, more power, more access. Mars, however, defines the future with enough. On Mars, being enough is not surviving, it is staying balanced. This idea of balance is one of Mars's quietest but most powerful effects. As the human mind thinks about Mars, it realizes perhaps the future is not about controlling, it is about adapting. On Mars, there is no such thing as dominating nature. On Mars, there is not even bargaining with nature. On Mars, there is only reality. And this reality softens humanity's view of the future. Mars does not promise to save humanity, but it opens space for humanity to redefine itself. This is why Mars is not a utopia. It is not dystopia either. Mars is a symbol of an honest future. There, nothing is hidden, nothing is polished, nothing is made easier. This honesty creates an unexpected relief in the mind, because although uncertainty is frightening, authenticity is calming. Mars tells the future not by embellishing it, but by simplifying it. This is why people who dream of Mars often dream quieter dreams, smaller, more inward, but more solid. On Mars, the future is not an escape, it is not a settlement. On Mars, the future is an attempt of harmony. Here, a person asks themselves, what do I really need? What can I exist without? These questions return from Mars to Earth, and this is where Mars's greatest impact begins. Mars makes us rethink the future not only on another planet, but in the world we live in right now.
Slower cities, simpler lives, less noise, more space. Mars does not accelerate the future, it deepens it. This is why the mind listening to Mars does not plan the future, it feels the future. This feeling does not rush, does not shout, does not frighten. It only says, you don't have to carry everything to continue. Mars's future lightens the weight on humanity's shoulders because there is no excess there. There is only function, and this function also simplifies the mind. Mars shows the future not as a goal, but as a state. This state is calm. This state is silent. This state is open. In the next and final section, we will address how this silent relationship we have formed with Mars is completed, why Mars stops speaking at a certain point and leaves the listener alone with their own silence. For now, do this. Don't rush when thinking about the future. Mars isn't either, and perhaps you don't have to either.
Mars's most distinctive feature is not its surface, not its color, not its cold either. Mars's most powerful feature is silence. But this does not resemble the silences on Earth. This is not the silence of an empty room, not the silence of a night either. Mars's silence is a silence that does not respond. Mars does not speak. Mars does not react. Mars does not even indicate that it has noticed you. And for the human mind, this situation is extremely unusual, because humans expect an echo wherever they exist, a trace, a return, a response. On Mars, none of these exist. You leave a trace, and Mars does not care about it. You make a sound, and Mars does not hold it. You build a structure, and Mars does not claim it. This is disturbing for humans at first, but then it becomes comforting, because on Mars, for the first time, humans do not need to prove themselves. You don't have to show who you are. You don't have to tell what you did. You don't have to explain why you're here. On Mars, you simply exist, and this state opens an unexpected door in a person's inner world. On Earth, silence is often temporary. Things start again. A sound comes, a notification drops. On Mars, silence is permanent. And permanent silence makes the mind work differently. Thoughts slow down. Internal monologues simplify. The mind doesn't have to entertain itself. On Mars, silence is not a void. It is a space. This space allows a person to approach themselves. On Mars, loneliness is not a lack. It is a state of density. And this density causes a person to feel their own existence more clearly. On Mars, you were alone, but you do not get lost, because Mars does not swallow you. It only withdraws. And this withdrawal teaches a person, not everything has to be around you. This awareness is one of the deepest marks Mars leaves on human psychology. On Mars, silence does not suppress, does not suffocate, does not squeeze. On Mars, silence makes room.
Every plan to go to Mars stops at some point, because Mars does not allow humans to hide their fragility. On Earth, fragility is often hidden. There are support systems, there are backups, there are alternatives. On Mars, there are none. On Mars, everything is exposed. A mistake is clear. A neglect is evident. A weakness cannot be hidden. This is why Mars is a planet not of strength, but of resilience. Resilience is not hardness. Resilience is not shouting. Resilience is not forcing. On Mars, resilience is acceptance. Accepting conditions, accepting limits, accepting one's own body. Mars measures not how strong a person is, but how adaptable they are. This is why on Mars, heroic narratives weaken. On Mars, no one becomes a hero alone. On Mars, systems matter, routines matter, silent discipline matters. On Mars, survival is not a momentary triumph, it is a daily balance. And this balance enables a person to see fragility not as a threat, but as information. Mars teaches fragility is not something to hide. On Mars, fragility is part of the plan. This perspective causes a person to be gentler with themselves. On Mars, making mistakes is being human. On Mars, learning is surviving. And therefore, Mars transforms the relationship a person has with themselves. On Mars, a person does not try to overcome themselves, they try to understand themselves. This is an attitude we are not very accustomed to on Earth, but on Mars, there is no other way.
On Mars, the concept of home is different. Home is not a place. Home is not a building. Home is not a view. On Mars, home is a functioning system, a living space, a pressure balance, a temperature line, a breathing rhythm. On Mars, home is not romantic, but it is real. And this reality fundamentally changes one's perception of home. On Earth, home is often defined by emotions, memories, sounds, smells. On Mars, home is continuity. Home must work, home must protect, home must not fail. This transforms one's sense of belonging as well. On Mars, belonging is tied not to soil, but to rhythm. checking at the same time every day, living in the same order every day, starting with the same silence every day. On Mars, home is a totality of habits. And this simplifies the way humans take root. Taking root on Mars is not about spreading, it's about deepening. Less space, more attention. On Mars, home is not a refuge, it is a point of balance. That's why a person living on Mars carries their home with them, even when they leave it, because home is no longer a place, but a state of harmony. And this awareness remains with a person even when they return to Earth. Mars does not teach home, it teaches being home.
There is a kind of silence on Mars that does not exist on Earth. Not the silence of an empty room or a quiet forest at night. This silence is older, wider, more patient. On Earth, silence is never complete. Even when everything seems still, there is movement, air shifting, insects humming, the planet itself trembling beneath your feet. But on Mars, silence stretches outward without resistance. It does not echo, it does not answer back, it simply remains. Imagine standing alone on the Martian surface, not as an explorer in a suit, but as a presence, aware, breathing, listening. The horizon curves gently away from you, colored in muted reds and browns, softened by dust that has been settling for millions of years. There are no footsteps behind you, no wind strong enough to speak, only a vast pause between moments. Time behaves differently here. On Earth, time presses forward. It demands attention. Clocks tick, screens glow, days insist on being filled. But on Mars, time loosens its grip. Seconds feel wider, minutes feel deeper, and hours seem to dissolve into something less rigid, move fluid. This is not because Mars is empty, it is because Mars is unfinished. The planet carries the memory of motion, ancient rivers carved into stone, valleys shaped by flowing water that no longer exists. The surface remembers warmth, pressure, storms, and change. But now that movement has slowed to a whisper. When you allow your mind to settle into this rhythm, something subtle happens. Thoughts begin to stretch. They lose their urgency. They drift instead of collide. You may begin to notice the space between your own heartbeats. On Earth, that space is filled with noise, expectations, responsibilities, reminders. On Mars, that space expands. Each heartbeat becomes a solitary event, floating in the quiet. This is where Mars begins to feel less like a place and more like a state of mind. A place where nothing asks anything of you, where there is no past chasing you and no future pulling you forward, only the present, wide and still. If humans were to live on Mars for long periods, this silence would not simply surround them, it would enter them. It would reshape the way thoughts form, the way memories surface, the way dreams unfold. Psychologists who study isolation often speak of cognitive stretching, a phenomenon where the mind, deprived of constant stimulation, begins to slow its internal pace. On Mars, this effect would be magnified. Without crowds, without traffic, without endless sound, the mind would begin to mirror the planet, sparse, open, unhurried. And in that openness, something unexpected might emerge: clarity. Not clarity as in answers, but clarity as in space, room to exist without definition. This is why Mars feels so compatible with sleep. Sleep is not the absence of thought, it is the absence of pressure. Mars offers that absence naturally. As you imagine lying beneath the Martian sky, thin, pale, scattered with distant stars, you are not waiting for sleep to arrive. You are simply allowing yourself to match the planet's pace, breath by breath, heartbeat by heartbeat. Nothing rushes you here.
Dreams on Earth are crowded. They borrow from conversations, images, unfinished tasks, and fragments of the day. Even in sleep, the mind is busy sorting through noise. But on Mars, dreams would be different. They would be slower, wider, less narrative-driven, and more atmospheric. Imagine falling asleep on Mars after a long period of quiet observation. No city lights behind your eyelids, no familiar sounds woven into memory, only the planet's stillness lingering in your awareness. Your dreams would not rush from scene to scene. They would unfold like landscapes. A single image might last what feels like hours. A horizon, a shadow, a slow-moving sky. Colors would be muted, rust, amber, pale gold. Shapes would be simple, clean, unforced. There would be fewer people in these dreams, more space, more distance. And in that distance, the mind would begin to explore itself differently. On Earth, dreams often replay social dynamics, conflict, desire, fear of loss. On Mars, those themes would soften. The absence of a living biosphere would shift the dream language inward. Instead of running, you might float. Instead of speaking, you might observe. Instead of reacting, you might simply exist. Researchers believe that dreams help the brain integrate experience. On Mars, experience would be radically minimal, which means dreams would become less about processing and more about expansion. The mind would fill the emptiness gently, like dust settling over time. There is also the question of scale. Mars constantly reminds you how small you are, not through danger, but through proportion. The sky is larger, the ground stretches farther, the silence extends longer. In dreams, this sense of scale would translate into feelings of vastness rather than fear. You would not dream of being chased, you would dream of drifting. You would not dream of falling, you would dream of descending slowly, without impact. This is why Mars is often described as peaceful rather than lonely by those who imagine it deeply. Loneliness implies absence with longing. Mars offers absence without demand. For sleep, this distinction matters. The body relaxes when nothing is required of it. The mind rests when it is not asked to perform. On Mars, even your dreams would not need to perform. They would simply be. And when you wake, if waking still feels like the right word, you would not feel pulled back into urgency. You would rise gradually, like light increasing rather than switching on. This is the quiet gift of Mars. Not excitement, not spectacle, but permission. Permission to slow, permission to rest, permission to drift without destination. Mars does not try to impress you. This is one of the first things you would notice if you truly spent time with it. It does not sparkle. It does not rush. It does not perform. On Earth, almost everything asks for your attention. Colors compete, sounds overlap, movements demand response. Even rest is often framed as something you must earn. Mars does not operate that way. It exists without commentary. The landscape stretches out, calm and undecorated, as if the planet itself has decided that nothing needs to be added or removed. No trees reaching upward, no oceans shifting and breathing, no birds cutting through the sky. And yet, it does not feel empty. It feels complete. The stillness on Mars is not the absence of life. It is the presence of patience, a patience that has had millions of years to deepen. If you allow your attention to settle there, something subtle begins to happen. Your internal dialogue softens. Thoughts that normally collide begin to space themselves out. On Earth, stillness often feels unnatural. We fill silence quickly, sometimes without realizing it. Music, voices, notifications, anything to avoid the feeling of pause. Mars offers pause without discomfort. This is because nothing is expected of you there. You do not need to interpret the landscape. You do not need to name what you see. You do not need to decide what comes next. The ground does not change when you look away. The horizon does not ask to be crossed. This creates a rare psychological state, non-demanding awareness. It is the same state the mind slips into just before sleep, when thoughts are still present but no longer gripping, when awareness floats rather than focuses. Mars seems to exist permanently in this state. Imagine sitting on a rock, the dust beneath you fine and unmoving. The sky above is thin, pale, stretched wide. Nothing approaches, nothing recedes. Your breathing begins to match the planet's pace, slow, unforced, natural. There is no sense of urgency to mark time, no reason to check how long you've been there. Time becomes something felt rather than measured. This is one of Mars's quiet lessons. Stillness does not need explanation. It does not need justification. It simply is. And when you carry this lesson inward, into your own body, into your own breath, sleep begins to feel less like something you do and more like something you allow. Mars does not lull you into sleep. It makes sleep unnecessary to chase.
Distance on Mars feels different than distance on Earth. On Earth, distance often implies separation. Being far from something usually means being away from people, from safety, from familiarity. On Mars, distance feels like protection. The vast open spaces do not isolate you, they soften the edges of thought. There is no sense of being cut off, only a sense of being unbothered. The nearest mountain is far enough away that it does not impose itself. The nearest horizon curves gently, never abruptly. The sky feels higher, less crowded. This distance creates a feeling rarely experienced on Earth: mental spaciousness. On Earth, even when you are alone, the mind often remains close to others. Conversations replay, faces surface, expectations linger. On Mars, distance is literal and psychological. You are not watched, you are not being evaluated, you are not being waited on. This absence of social gravity allows the mind to rest in a deeper way. Thoughts begin to lose their sharp edges. They no longer arrive fully formed. They drift in fragments, softer, slower. This is why Mars feels like a place where memories would surface differently, not as scenes replayed in detail, but as impressions, colors without names, feelings without stories. Distance filters experience. It keeps what is heavy from pressing too close. As sleep approaches, the mind often seeks this same distance, a separation from the day, a gentle pulling away from effort. Mars offers that naturally. If you imagine lying down beneath the Martian sky, the stars above would not feel near. They would feel respectfully far away, present but not intrusive. This is important. Sleep requires safety, and safety is not always found in closeness. Sometimes safety is found in space. Mars understands this instinctively. Its distance does not threaten, it reassures. The planet does not crowd you with meaning. It does not surround you with reminders. It simply allows you to exist without proximity. And in that space, wide, quiet, and unclaimed, sleep finds room to arrive. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but gradually, like dust settling after a long, gentle fall. On Mars, the concept of home is different. Home is not a place. Home is not a building. Home is not a view. On Mars, home is a functioning system, a living space, a pressure balance, a temperature line, a breathing rhythm. On Mars, home is not romantic, but it is real. And this reality fundamentally changes one's perception of home. On Earth, home is often defined by emotions, memories, sounds, smells. On Mars, home is continuity. Home must work. Home must protect. Home must not fail. This transforms one's sense of belonging as well. On Mars, belonging is tied not to soil, but to rhythm. Checking at the same time every day, living in the same order every day, starting with the same silence every day. On Mars, home is a totality of habits, and this simplifies the way humans take root. Taking root on Mars is not about spreading, it's about deepening. Less space, more attention. On Mars, home is not a refuge, it is a point of balance. That's why a person living on Mars carries their home with them even when they leave it. Because home is no longer a place, but a state of harmony. And this awareness remains with a person even when they return to Earth. Mars does not teach home, it teaches being home. At some point, Mars ceases to be a planet. It is no longer a surface, no longer a coordinate, no longer a destination. Mars becomes a state of being. For the human mind, this transformation happens silently. It goes unnoticed, unannounced. But one morning or one evening, a person feels this. Mars is no longer out there. Mars is now within me. This is the least discussed but most lasting outcome of Mars journeys. Because Mars is not a place you visit and return from, Mars is an experience you internalize. What is remembered about Mars is often not the landscape, not the crimson horizons, not the dust storms. What is remembered is the state of stillness. On Mars, a person truly stops for the first time because rushing has no meaning. Mars does not wait for you, but it does not chase you either. And this dissolves one's conditioned perception of speed from Earth. On Mars, time does not exist to motivate you, nor does it exist to frighten you. On Mars, time simply flows. On Earth, a person constantly proves themselves, even when silent, even when alone, even when asleep. You must be something. You must arrive somewhere. You must leave a mark. On Mars, this impulse becomes meaningless. Because Mars does not applaud you, Mars does not judge you, Mars does not measure you. On Mars, everything you do simply becomes done. This creates a great relaxation in the human mind. Because for the first time, this becomes possible. I don't have to be anything. This sentence is revolutionary for human psychology. On Mars, failure is ordinary, so is success. Both are the same to Mars, and this equality breaks down the harsh hierarchies within oneself. On Mars, a person does not lift themselves up, nor do they push themselves down. They simply settle. On Mars, there is fear, but there is no panic. These are not the same thing. Fear produces knowledge. Panic corrupts thought. Mars does not produce panic because Mars does not surprise. Mars is dangerous, but it is consistent. This consistency changes one's relationship with fear. On Mars, fear is not something to run from, but a signal to listen to. Be careful here, slow down here, stop here. On Mars, fear does not shout, it whispers. And for the first time, a person doesn't have to suppress their fear. Mars teaches the natural state of fear. This is why a person returning from Mars reacts less to the noisy fears of Earth. Because Mars has taught this: real danger is silent, false danger is loud. On Mars, time does not contract, it expands. On Earth, time is a line. On Mars, time is a field. A day does not resemble a week does not resemble a month, but none of them rush you. On Mars, time does not push you forward, nor does it pull you back. It stands beside you. And this dissolves the hostility one has developed toward time. On Mars, you do not race against time, you harmonize with it. This harmony seeps into one's life on Earth as well. Someone returning from Mars knows that not every night must end in hurry, that not every morning must begin something either. Mars teaches that time is merely a framework. You fill it, or you don't. Both are possible. Mars is solitary, but it does not produce loneliness. This paradox is Mars's most powerful lesson. On Mars, solitude is not a deficiency, it is an intensity. Being alone on Mars is not being abandoned, it is having your attention undivided. This is why on Mars a person truly hears their inner voice for the first time, and that voice is often not as harsh as we think. On Mars, the inner voice does not shout, it does not demand, it does not judge. It simply tells. Mars is one of the rare places where a person can make peace with their own mind. And then the return comes. But this return is not a severance. You do not return from Mars, you carry Mars with you. Mars becomes a silent reference point within a person. When Earth is noisy, Mars is remembered. When the mind scatters, Mars is remembered. When life accelerates, Mars is remembered. And a person passes this sentence through themselves: I come from a slower place. This sentence changes one's relationship with life. Mars does not teach escape. Mars does not teach endurance. Mars teaches attunement. And perhaps this is why Mars will never truly be conquered. Because Mars is not a place to be taken. Mars is a state to be learned. Now, if your eyes have grown heavy, if words have blurred, if thoughts are losing their clarity, this is a good sign. The Mars narrative does not end here. It simply merges with silence. Mars is no longer a story. It is a background. Breathe in, slowly out. Time is spacious. The universe is calm. And you do not have to arrive anywhere. Good night.